coming up, a classic 80s duo tells us the unbelievable story of hitting an impossible deadline. They had to write and record a song for an iconic 80s movie in just one night. Now, the director already had a song from them, but he watched the pivotal scene that the song was going to be in, and he needed something more. He needed something incredible. It would become one of the most memorable moments in film history, one that generations after would try to mimic. I mean, their song would be the basis for every high schooler's dream moment from that point forward. But the song, it would also become a bit of a curse for the band. They would be deemed by many as one-hit wonders, even though they had a couple, actually 4 more hits. And they were one of the premier bands of the era, called the Lennon and McCartney of synth pop by many. The details of this deadline fury and how they got one of the most magical songs of the decade in one night is coming up. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember downing an Orange Julius with a pretzel with cheese in the food court in the mall, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure you subscribe below right now so you always get our latest interviews and stories. Click the bell and all that good stuff. Also, check us out on Patreon where we're putting up full interviews and we got plenty of content there. Again, this is our daily time machine, and that's what helps keep it a daily time machine. We also have merch below. So I'm excited to bring you yet another episode from, I think, everybody's favorite on here, Revelations, where featured artists take us for a magical deep dive, exploring the greatest songs and albums of their career, stories that you just won't find anywhere else. It's one of my favorite synth pop duos. The band Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, otherwise known as OMD, they had such a great run in the 80s. Comprised of vocalist bassist Andy McCluskey and vocalist keyboardist Paul Humphreys. Along with the members, the band released the song Electricity in 1979 to some fanfare. And then they came on strong into the 80s with several highly acclaimed singles and albums, including the anti-war classic Enola Gay and the blissful song Souvenir, which went to number 3 on the UK charts. Both of these from the album Architecture and Morality. And then the band got experimental with the wonderful LP Dazzle Ships. It was also a commercial disappointment. Great album. That's where OMD started to shift to a more pop sound with the album Junk Culture that was released in '84, with fantastic singles like Locomotion that went to the top 5 in the UK, and there was also Tesla Girls. And then the band started to make serious inroads in the US with 1985's Crush. They worked with producer Stephen Hague, whom they co-wrote their first single to hit in America with, So in Love. That went to the top 30. Secret was another great single from that album. And then the band was tapped to write a song for a John Hughes film called Pretty in Pink. The film was written and co-executive produced by Hughes, but the king of teen cinema would leave directing to Howard Deutsch, who also directed Some Kind of Wonderful, kind of the same story in a different way.
I didn't believe in you. I've always believed in you. I just didn't believe in me.
So I guess originally director Howard Deutsch, he was going to support the film musically with theme music primarily. But you know, John Hughes, ever the champion of new wave and post-punk, he influenced Howard Deutsch to use his Old Reliable. And of course, he was right on the money. Man, he just got us. He just understood us.
If you leave, don't leave now.
He always picked the best music for these moments in these movies. If You Leave would become the crown jewel of his classic soundtracks, along with Don't You Forget About Me.
Forget about me.
Of course, filled with some of the greatest bands of the year, the Smiths, New Order, the Psychedelic Furs, Echo and the Bunnymen, and of course, OMD. I had the opportunity to talk with Andy and Paul from OMD about their work on this classic 1986 film, and they shared some stories that will leave you amazed. They had to pull off a perfect song in a very short amount of time. I'm going to let them tell you about this miraculous event. Up next, we have the story of the number one 80s classic, If You Leave, which many mistake as their only hit. These guys actually had a lot of hits in America. Like I said, So in Love. There was also Dreamin' and Forever Live and Die. They all hit the top 40. And actually, all of these songs were on their Best Of album, one of the best of albums of the 80s. Any serious 80s music fan has or had this album. They also made some amazing records in the 90s. I'm telling you, you're going to like this episode of Revelations because they go into all of this. As we get into this interview, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. So I designed this pair myself. It's got Professor Rock on the side. You can do the same thing. You can choose the color, the shape, the style, add some fashion to your life by clicking on the info button up here or the link below to get amazing prices on the best frames, up to 80% off regular retail prices. Here's the duo that many call the Lennon and McCartney of synth pop, OMD.
If you leave, don't leave now. Please don't.
I admire you.
If you wish. Let's plow.
Everybody had to have that moment at their prom, which is why for me and millions of others, no other song would work for our senior prom than If You Leave. And the movie was great, but it was the song that made you go, I've got to have that experience, that moment. Like I said, it didn't live up to my dreams, the prom, but that 4 minutes and 31 seconds did because of the music. That's how powerful music is.
I touch you once, I touch you twice. I won't let go.
The idea really of the lyric was that actually it's about the end of high school. And that's, I think, why somehow unconsciously it resonates with people, because it's like, don't leave now. It's the ending of your childhood and all the people you've grown up with and the place you've been going to since you were whatever age. It's a rite of passage song. It's the fear of what comes next. And that's kind of what we were trying to capture. So although everybody's partying at the prom, again, there is this OMD melancholy and fear of what comes next, you know?
I love you. Always.
John Hughes changed the song in the end, right? After the test screening.
Well, he changed
the ending.
He changed the ending of the film.
Because the test screening came back and they wanted her to get with Andrew McCarthy, Molly Ringwald.
That's right. Yeah, we'd written the song for the opposite ending of the film, basically. And we landed in LA. We had a 2-inch master tape ready to mix. We'd recorded the song, we were ready to mix it. And then we got to mess it, because we had like 2 days in LA that we were going to mix this track.
You were about to start a tour, right?
Yeah.
Like 2 days from starting a tour when that happened.
So instead of mixing it, they said, the song doesn't work. We've changed the end of the movie. The lyrics don't work anymore. Can you write us another one? And we're like,
you're kidding,
today? Yeah, today. We're like, oh.
They wanted you to write it at 120.
It had to be the same tempo as Don't You Forget About Me, because they filmed the prom scene using Don't You Forget About Me.
About me.
But of course, in the end, it didn't matter, because when we saw the final edit, they were like, none of these people are dancing on our beat. It didn't matter what tempo
it was a little bit off.
It was a little bit off.
I mean, it was nuts. Yeah, we just went into the studio off the top of our heads, spent all day and most of the night writing If You Leave, not knowing whether it was going to work or not, put it on a cassette, gave it to a motorcyclist who drove it over to Paramount and put it at the front office at 4 a.m. We went to bed, 8:30 in the morning, we had a call from our manager. John Hughes loves it. Can you go and finish it? And we're like, we've just gone to bed.
We haven't slept in 2 days as it is.
Yeah. And you're going to go out on tour, on this huge tour after.
Yeah. So it was really lucky that we managed to write what turned out to be a really good song and a popular song, because, 9 times out of 10, when you're in under that amount of pressure, you'll come up with not the right thing. And somehow we managed to write.
Well, Goddess of
really
Love
good
was
song.
actually originally supposed to be the song.
That's correct.
What's interesting about Pretty in Pink is that it's almost, it's almost reached a kind of a cult status in terms of movies. And there's a whole new generation of people have
Oh, my
discovered
daughter, it's her
this.
favorite movie.
Yeah,
She's 16, and in that moment that I was when I was 16 when it came out.
yeah, it's kind of transcended generations. And what we've noticed as well is that, particularly on our tour in 2013, we're noticing so many, so much more young people coming to see our shows now.
It was funny as well that the band, the 1975, recorded their first album in my studio in Liverpool. I met Matt Healy and he was like, oh my God, you wrote If You Leave, and the Pretty in Pink soundtrack is like my heart. I'm like, really?
Yeah. The films of John Hughes, growing up when I was in high school, they had movie soundtracks to Pretty in Pink and to Some Kind of Wonderful, that the whole soundtrack was like the modern rock of the late 80s, the Smiths and Depeche Mode and all those bands. I read that you were influenced by John Hughes. Mm-hmm. This album feels like a soundtrack
That's exactly what it is.
To a John Hughes movie.
It's exactly stylistically what we were going for. And that's because that's the way that I perceive my adolescence. Mm-hmm. Everybody loves to have a really romanticized, antiquated view of their past, of their teenage years. When you're living it, you romanticize it because you're a teenager.
Right.
So you don't need any more nostalgic elements. Because when you're a teenager, everything's like the apocalypse, isn't it? So it doesn't really matter. And then as you get further away from that time, as you get older, you romanticize what it was like. You fill in all of the gray areas with, idealized whatever. That's the way that I perceived my life. And that record is, like we said, we wanted to make a soundtrack to the John Hughes movie about our lives.
This also had legs not only with the movie, but also Goldberg's, this American show that has been used on. It's a show about a kid growing up in the 80s. Modern Family, which is one of the biggest shows.
Oh, yeah, that was a fun
Bill and Claire's song together.
It's not our song, Claire. Our song is If You Leave by Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark.
Oh! Are you sure?
Pretty sure. I sang it at our wedding.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Well, actually, he's the idiot. He fell in love to a breakup song.
Ignore him. This is beautiful.
The covers, too. Good Charlotte covering it for Not Another Teen Movie.
If you leave, don't leave now.
Not a Surf.
The Not a Surf version's nice.
Promise me just one more night.
It's strange to say, but there is a slight downside to it being such a big song. Because it took us so long to kind of break America and get radio play, all of the ones that came before it, which were huge in Europe, nobody really knows. So in America, we're almost like a one-hit wonder. There's like If You Leave up there, and then there's some down here,
We don't normally play this song, but we will for you tonight. It's the song that ruined our careers. We were doing great as an alternative band till we wrote this.
It was actually 5.5 minutes long, and we edited the end and we could not get it short enough. And they said, it cannot be longer than 4.5 minutes. The radio won't play it. So we did an edit that was actually like 4 minutes 48 seconds, and we just wrote 4:31 on it. So it's not actually 4:31, it's much longer.
Well, the vocal on that song is so passionate. It means so much to so many people.
Always said we'd meet again.
My little outcast group of friends, we were kind of like, secret's out, right? Like you said, now other people, this is our band. And you always kind of
How dare
feel
you become
that
commercial.
connection, right?
It belonged to so many people.
Yeah.
You really belong to me.
But If You Leave did, it's one of the greatest love songs of all time. The perfect ending to that movie. The next song is Forever Live and Die. Tell me about that, about putting that together.
Well, that was a song I started on a motorway. I just dropped my wife off at the airport, and I just had this tune in my head when I was driving back to Liverpool. And I stopped at a service station, and I didn't have anything to record this idea on, so I kind of did some notation down in a kind of quirky notation because I can't read or write proper music. So I did something that I could mark the notes down. And then I called, it was supposed to have been a day off, and I called Pete, the engineer at the Amazon Studios, and I said, look, I've got this idea, I really need to record it today. I know it's a day off, but can you just go to the studio, switch on the gear, I'll be there in a few hours. And then that night I just recorded most of it.
It's such a beautiful song. I just love. And that, of course, another huge hit, We Love You. Tell me really quick something about that.
To be honest, actually, we were just playing around with the machines and randomly started making these patterns and rhythms. So we just we laid it down and started singing over it. It was quite often we get inspired by getting a new toy in the studio that makes a new sound. We'll explore it, just getting excited by having a new sound palette. And then it's the music that then creates the lyric. You know, you just start singing something on top of it that's out of the top of your head. You had no idea where it came from. You didn't know what you want to go and write about. It just happened. That was one of those songs that just happened.
And Dreaming, which came out on the Best of OMD, another phenomenal song.
You've named all the ones we'll be playing tonight, so your wife will be happy if she knows them.
I'm playing all of these tonight.
Another phenomenal song. But I want to ask, I've got to ask you before we end about Sugar Tax, because there's a song on here that I thought was better than If You Leave. One of the best songs that you ever wrote. Was It Something I Said?
Was it something I said? Or something you read?
I put on every mixtape for every,
It's a great
song. Tell me really quickly about it.
Well, because that album was a strange album, because that's the album that I made without Paul, when Paul had left the band. And it was terrifying to be in Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark on my own. And in fact, actually, you'll notice that it doesn't mention my name on any of the credits. I was just hiding behind the name of the band. And part of the pain and the difficulty of doing it was actually the only person I'd ever written music with since I was 16 was this guy sitting next to me now. So it was a really frightening voyage of trying to do this on my own. And actually, of course, Was It Something I Said refers to what happened between us. Was it something I said? What happened? Where'd you go? Help!
Wow.
So you picked up on the song that's actually about what happened to us.
I think it's a great song.
Such an amazing song. And I love how, when you get how it builds. Your vocal builds and it's like...
And it's screaming at the top of it,
And Sailing on the Seven Seas, too, another huge hit on the 90s, another great hit for you guys. I want to end on a couple of things really quick. English Electric, it's just classic OMD. You guys just nailed it. And I love Night Cafe. Just a return to innocence, man.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, I love it.
But again, it's a sad song. It's a song about somebody's gone, and you're trying to get your head around what happened.
Yeah.
And a lot of the. I imagine myself being in an Edward Hopper painting. There's always one solitary figure who looks very melancholy, and that's the vibe of the music. And so, actually, the lyrics mention 8 different Hopper painting titles. No, we were really, the History of Modern album we made was sort of us getting the wheels running again in writing songs, but we were very clear on English Electric that we wanted to be minimal like we were in the early days, because the trouble is now, the machinery, you can have 200 different stereo tracks and more is not always better. So we had the opportunity to just say, no, we're going to keep everything really minimal, simple like it was in the early days, but also slightly experimental and as beautiful and melancholy as we make it. So I'm glad it resonates with you, because
absolutely.
Because we as a band, we still think we still feel we've got things to say in music. And so, we'll just keep saying them as long as we've got things to say.
So you have to realise that we're never going to sell the number of records we used to, because we're considered to be an old band. But when we got together again a few years ago, it was great fun. But after a couple of years, we were like, is this it? Are we just a tribute band to ourselves now? Do we dare to do new music? And I'm glad we dared.
If you had a double A-side, one song on each side, like a record, a 45, to gift the world, of all the songs you guys have done, what would be the A-side and B-side if you would gift that to the world?
I would, you know what, you could probably put Enola Gay. And Souvenir. Two sides of one, and that would give you the simplicity of the melody and the emotional melancholy as well.
Yeah.
I
love that. And that's the two sides of you guys.
There you go. Yeah. One of his, one of mine.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Isn't that amazing? It's such a cool story. Leave us a comment about OMD and this beautiful song. What are your memories of the movie and the song? We have more songs from John Hughes films coming. Tell us what you'd like to hear, what you'd like to see. If you like this, we invite you to be a part of our community. We'd love to have you. We talk music all the time. It's a time machine, like I said. Just subscribe below. Hit us up on Patreon. It's all about keeping the music alive. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.